We moved very, very quickly. We came up with the name, the design of the space, and built out the space in like less than 45 days.
So talk about
the product now that is being sold in the stores is not the same product that we used to get from our friendly neighborhood dealer in New York City.
Right.
If you care about your community, but also if you care about your body, you will shop legal. They required them to deliver jobs to people in the community, affordable housing. Very few of those promises were ever delivered. We're trying to educate consumers to consume responsibly, but also purposefully.
Never Work a Day talks to folks that are pivoting their lives to follow their passions. We talk about pitfalls, misadventures, hilarious and heartbreaking, meet the outstanding individuals, and learn about their continuing journey. I'm your host, Nikki Frankel, purveyor of platforms and creator of play spaces, and I'm so excited to bring you the stories of these extraordinary individuals.
Welcome to another edition of Never Work a Day. I'm Kanene Ayo Holder. I'm the guest host of the Never Work a Day podcast, and I'm so excited to bring on my dear friend and Howard University sister, Arana Hankin Biggers. Arana was born in New York and raised in the Midwest, where she developed a curiosity about the way that cities are designed and the communities that they're supposed to serve. She studied at Howard University, which is where we met, and later earned a master's degree from Stanford University in anthropology. She began her career in public service, working for David Patterson, and then led large-scale community and infrastructure projects for the Empire State Development, where she managed some of New York's most complex redevelopment initiatives. Lots of moving parts and stakeholders. As a Loeb Fellow at Harvard's Graduate School of Design, Arana deepened her expertise in city planning and the intersection of design, policy, and social equity. In 2022, Arana co-founded The Travel Agency, a cannabis store that is now 4 locations throughout New York City, including on the iconic Fifth Avenue, blocks away from Rockefeller Center. She has designed the store to be a purpose-led dispensary group, redefining what cannabis can look like. It can look like luxury. It can look like quality. It can look like education. This takes from the form of retail environments that are also tranquil and intersectional and international in this space. People from all over the world are coming, not just to New York City, but coming to literally the travel agency. She prioritizes inclusivity, community, and education along with creativity because the spaces are kind of like an Apple store. They're beautiful, as well as holding some of the best quality cannabis you can find. She, because of all of this, was honored in 2025 by Inc. magazine as a top female founder of the year. Through her partnerships with the Doe Fund that services formerly incarcerated individuals and the Cannabis Justice and Equity Initiative, her company helps create pathways for formerly incarcerated New Yorkers and communities harmed by cannabis criminalization. And she then donates 51% of the profits from her Union Square flagship location to support the Doe Fund's reentry programs. Arana Hankin Biggers, an entrepreneur, an advocate, and a designer of systems of change. And I am so honored and thrilled to bring this episode to you. Thank you for watching. Arana, my bison sister, HU.
HU.
You know. Howard University. So excited to have this talk with you. Excited and honor. There's so much to cover. And so I would just like to literally dive in. So tell me a little about your background. Started off in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Somehow you landed in New York City and have, 4 stores that are designer bespoke with cannabis. But let's start with your origin story.
Okay.
How did all of this start?
Yeah. So I was born in New York, lived in Teaneck till about 8 years old. And then my parents moved us to Wisconsin, to a suburb north of Milwaukee in Mequon. And my dad was in the liquor business for much of my life and most of my life. So he worked at Miller Brewing Company, which is why I went to Milwaukee. They came back to New York when I was about 19, after my sister graduated from high school. So I really have no connection to Wisconsin any longer. All my family is here. I have strong roots in New York. I love the city.
Yes.
It's home. through and throughout. But my degree actually is in anthropology, and my graduate degree is in anthropology and archaeology as well. And I got into cannabis kind of through this very long, circuitous route, but I began my career in New York City working for David Patterson. And I met David Patterson initially at an African burial ground event
Yes.
because he was the first elected official to try to preserve this site that was excavated in Lower Manhattan.
Mhm.
And my first job when I graduated from Howard University was working as an osteological technical assistant.
Mhm.
I was doing skeletal analysis and dental analysis on the 400 plus whole skeletons that were excavated, exhumed really from Lower Manhattan
Mhm.
in the as they were building a very large federal office tower.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you recall this history, but the construction workers and the team, the government attempted to hide it from the community. It was incredibly controversial. The remains were initially sent to Lehman College, where they were not taking care of the bones properly, and so the community advocated for them to be sent to Howard. And so I met David Patterson at an African burial ground event, and we connected around the history of this amazing site. He actually studied history at Columbia when he was an undergrad, and he invited me to come work for his office in Harlem. He was the deputy New York State Senate leader
Mhm.
at that
Mhm.
time, and I worked in constituent services on 125th Street, helping people who were at risk of being evicted from public housing or from their homes, people getting access to Medicaid, people who needed places to needed spots in shelters.
Mhm.
So a lot of different other types of support that we were providing to the community, obviously, Central Harlem. When he became the leader, I created a position for myself called Arts and Cultural Liaison,
Yes.
which was fabulous because
Mhm.
I got to work with lots of different arts groups. A lot of them were in the midst of capital projects also at the time, so Studio Museum and Schaumburg. And
Mhm.
so that was kind of my entry point into real estate development, working on capital projects with not-for-profits, helping them secure funding, helping them secure approvals. Did a lot of work with the Harlem Community Development Corporation. I was working on the very early stages of the Victoria Theater project.
Mhm. Mhm.
Many, many years ago, it took that long for the project to be built. This was probably now 25 years ago where that proposal was initiated,
Mhm.
and it was just completed recently.
If I can.
Yes.
Yeah, because I live on 125th Street for almost 20 years myself, right? And so we both went to Howard, right?
Yes.
Why did I go to Howard? Because in the 4th grade, 1989, is when the breaking news story was how they found those enslaved bones in on Day Street. Yes, the
Oh
African
my
burial
goodness.
ground. And so at that time in New York, they said, slavery didn't happen in New York. It happened in the South, and you go up north for freedom. So in the 4th grade, we were like, what's going on? So there's so many connections that we have, and that, in terms of arts, in terms of culture, in
Yeah.
terms of policy, in terms of funding, right? That lives and breathes through your veins, right?
It really does, and that really created the foundational passion that I have
Mhm.
with the work that I'm doing in cannabis now,
Mhm.
because I realized through that experience of doing skeletal analysis on that population that this country was literally built on the backs of Black people. We built City Hall, we built, Wall Street, and most of the population died because they were constructing these incredibly, large marble buildings. But the contributions that we have made to this country, but we are now living today with absolutely nothing in terms of just the percentage of wealth that we have compared to white Americans who have been here for a lot fewer years, fewer generations than we've been.
Mhm.
So it's something that's always intrigued me, why there's such a wide racial wealth gap, why Black people have contributed so much, but we have nothing to show for it. And so that was something that really piqued my interest in politics and in government, getting into economic development policy. I had the opportunity to work on MWBE
Yeah.
policy.
Oh, if you can,
Yes, the acronym.
minority women
Business
businesses, right? So that,
enterprises.
and enterprises, just to let people know, and you are right, like your company, the travel agency, is also a minority women owned business as well, right? So
Well,
so
we're
again,
BIPOC. We're not
well, yes.
certified, but yes. So, working with David Patterson, I helped to run his campaign when he was running for LG, lieutenant governor.
Mhm.
And as a part of that administration, we created the first small business revolving loan fund, which helped support a lot of MWBs. We also created the first stem cell research fund, which is super interesting. And I continued to work on a lot of capital projects for arts groups throughout the state. when Elliot Spitzer, if you recall, got
Yes.
caught with a prostitute. Our team of 5 people who worked for David Patterson had to figure out how to run New York State in less than 24 hours. And
I remember.
it was
Yeah.
a very stressful, tumultuous period. But I moved to Albany and I worked in a very small unit of folks who oversaw all the housing, transportation, economic development agencies. And I pulled in all the arts agencies because I wanted to continue to have that portfolio.
Yes.
And so I learned a lot about getting projects built in New York State and obviously just the politics of how projects get approved and actually drafting legislation, implementing legislation, which was super helpful for cannabis, obviously. At the end of the administration, I went to work at the Empire State Development Corporation, now ESD, and I was the first director for the Atlantic Yards project. I stepped in just before the Barclay Center was beginning to get constructed, and my job was to oversee the construction. But more importantly, and just as importantly, I should say, my job was also to stop all the lawsuits because the community had sued New York State and the developer 14 times, and they brought me in to stop all these lawsuits. And so I developed and designed a community engagement plan and forced the developer to implement it and to meet with the community on a regular basis, and learned a lot just about the community benefit agreement and the agreements that are brokered between government and private developers in exchange for additional FAR.
Break down FAR.
FAR is additional square footage, but essentially the state has the ability to override local zoning. So the state was able to approve for City of Radnor, in this case, the ability to build very large-scale buildings on this site without having to go through a public review process. And that was also the case with the project I oversaw for the state Columbia Manhattanville Expansion Project. Columbia University was able to override local zoning through the state without public review because to build a new campus in West Harlem. There was also a very robust community benefits agreement on that project as well. And these agreements essentially mandated the developer in Columbia, in this case, they required them to deliver jobs to people in the community, affordable housing, union slots. And very few of those promises were ever delivered. In Columbia's case, I literally was fighting with Columbia almost every week because they refused to go above and beyond what they'd already done, which is nothing in Harlem. They didn't want to deliver anything to the community. Became very, disenchanted and just frustrated working in government. And also at the time, Cuomo had taken over and working with his administration was very complicated and really just not. It was a terrible experience, I should say.
There you go.
It was not a positive experience working
We are not holding
for the
back.
Cuomo administration, just to be frank.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for a way to get out of government and I realized at that moment, working on all these very large-scale projects, that government's really not driving the decision-making. It's the private sector. And then if you really want to make an impact, it really should work in the private sector. And so it was in the midst kind of the financial crisis, and it was tough to get projects or jobs in the private sector, working for real estate development companies. And I didn't have much of a private sector background. So I was lucky and blessed that I was able to do this fellowship at Harvard that a friend had done at the Graduate School of Design at Harvard for mid-career professionals. And they allowed us to just kind of hang out on campus in the school for a year, audit classes, give lectures, mentor students, which was a tremendous experience. And my focus really was looking on studying unique real estate development models that actually give back to communities of color in a meaningful way.
If I can for a second, I love this journey because you're in so many pockets of opportunity and then the policies don't match the people who need the back end of all the development and all the profits that these developers have in exchange for our land, right? And our space, right? So, the contract is broken, right?
Yes.
In terms of the social contract, right? And so you're seeing that when you're trying to get funding for these arts organizations. I'm also an artist. I'm also very passionate about that. You see that when Barclays, right? Like that, even Jay-Z, right?
Yeah.
So many stakeholders were involved. So what I'm hearing from you is a lot of stakeholder engagement. Columbia University, I did get a Columbia University Community Scholar Fellowship.
Oh, wow.
To kind of do the same thing that you were doing at Harvard, which is auditing classes, getting to network, building an innovative idea that is disciplinary. So I'm loving how there's so many intersections that I have experienced from the back end that were all Arana all this entire time. It was like little puppet strings that you were pulling in the arts and in policy and culture that literally do benefit the community.
Yeah.
Because on the other side of you being the face of that are a lot of other faces that don't get to be in the room, and their voices, though not heard, their needs are also needing to be addressed.
Mm.
So I really love what you're doing, what you have been doing. So just share some more. I'm so excited about this. This is
Yeah,
insane.
it's an incredibly
Whoa.
long journey, long story. But
Yeah.
after the Loeb,
Mhm.
I did consulting for a bit at HR&A Advisors, who were the firm that spearheaded the Highline Project, working on post-Superstorm Sandy reconstruction and community development planning. And then I worked at WeWork, and I thought it was a very unique model at the time. I was looking for a very unique real estate company, and I found it. And
Private sector.
yeah, I worked for the vice chair, and I was overseeing partnerships with private developers who were looking to get into real estate development ground up projects. So working with the Kushner companies, for
Yes.
example, for a number of projects where the WeWork would serve as the anchor tenant and the Kushners would develop the project. And then I left with the vice chair and did some real estate projects in Yonkers, actually historic site projects. So we were restoring an historic power plant in the Hudson River for an event space, performance space. We were restoring an historic manor that was being used for film and TV shoots and trying to make it into more of a formal wedding event venue. But those two projects also included formerly incarcerated populations, which is why I was interested in it. In Yonkers, we partnered with Greystone Bakery, which is a bakery that employs formerly incarcerated individuals to bake their cookies and brownies, which have been in the past sold on famous airlines. And then we also had partnered with the population that were formerly incarcerated at Bayview Correctional Facility in Chelsea, where the developer I worked with had development rights at one moment in time to work on that project. And so we had created a not-for-profit to work with formerly incarcerated women to help them get into construction and engineering and design jobs. So that thread has always kind of existed, working with cultural institutions and communities that have been kind of left behind. In some
And then
regard.
also incarcerated.
Formerly incarcerated individuals. And then I worked for a company called Sugar Hill Capital Partners, who I actually met through my husband, Sanford, because they owned 100 multifamily buildings in Upper Manhattan and Harlem.
Interesting.
And they were converting the basement spaces to artist studios, giving them to artists for free in exchange for artwork. And my husband was the first artist in the program. And so they brought me on because they were looking to do more development work. And I was spearheading kind of their ground up development and doing some really interesting projects. We did a project, the first food hall at Upper Manhattan, working with local entrepreneurs. We helped to support a lot of local new businesses get retail spaces in Upper Manhattan and Brooklyn. And then I started my own consulting company just before the pandemic, working for folks like the Urban League, helping them to get capital dollars, trying to redevelop church sites in Harlem, which is very, very difficult, working with small family landlords in Brooklyn, like West Indian community and Black communities who have access to these amazing parcels they're trying to redevelop. Worked at Brick Arts for a while.
I love Brick Arts.
I was the interim COO during the pandemic, helping to do pandemic, reentry planning, all these things. And then cannabis was how I fell into cannabis was incredibly serendipitous. The founder of Sugar Hill Capital Partners, his neighbor during the pandemic who are now CEO, had worked in cannabis in Massachusetts for a number of years as a fractional CFO. And they were hanging out, drinking wine, enjoying their pod during the pandemic and downtime. And at that moment in time, cannabis was just about to become legal for recreational use in New York State.
Yes.
It was March 21.
There you go.
And Paul was like, hey, we should go after a license together. And Alex was like, well, I know the perfect person. And so they pulled me in because I had just become MWBE certified at the state and city level. And at the time, everyone thought the state was going to be prioritizing Black-owned, women-owned businesses, which was not ultimately the case initially. But we were very, very lucky, and it was very serendipitous because Alex's sole funder of his new real estate fund, which he launched around that time, just happened to be the largest investor of cannabis in the West Coast. And so he connected us with these amazing cannabis consultants and lawyers. Alex had no idea this gentleman was involved in cannabis. Alex had never consumed cannabis.
Right.
He knew
So
nothing about cannabis. It was incredibly serendipitous.
yes.
So he helped to advise us, and Alex connected us also with one of our primary investors and an advisor, Robert Carnegie Jr., helped make the connection with the Doe Fund.
So let
Yes,
people know
so a
what the
lot
Doe
to
Fund. Yeah,
digest.
yes, a lot. So what is and all good. This is like literally amazing. Like all these touch points. So really quickly explain the Doe Fund because that also has the corollary to your other work with formerly incarcerated
Yes,
individuals. So and I will say just to thread this here. Ironically, you were working for the Barclay Center, that the Atlantic projects, right?
Atlantic Yards, yeah.
Atlantic Yards. And then now one of your travel agency stores is literally across the street
Yeah,
from the Barclays Center. So there's so many ways in which
yeah,
your life touch points become actual physical, tangible experiences of what you think is now something that people can experience and become real in terms of your liberation philosophy, in terms
yeah,
of formerly incarcerated, in terms of the arts, in terms of policy, and amplifying underrepresented voices. And now also this all comes together
yeah,
because the travel agency isn't just a cannabis dispensary. It is art in and of itself. Your husband is a world-renowned artist, Sanford Biggers.
mm,
So when you go into the store, it's like you might not know all the moving parts that is you, that is a serendipitous way that it all came together. But listening to your story will literally land in a way that people can really appreciate why the travel agency is different and above any other cannabis dispensary in New York City because you built it by design from the
yeah,
bottom up, literally from the bottom. And you're even talking about how minority women-owned businesses, yes, right? And how that was supposed to be the pathway, right,
yeah,
from cannabis incarceration to cannabis not just consuming it, but also being an entrepreneur and making money, and that didn't happen, right? But you were able to make it happen. So just share some
yeah.
more, and the Doe Fund, to just bring it all together. I love it's just it's insane.
Yeah, the Doe Fund's been a tremendous partner, and I agreed. Alex was always trying to pull me into some new business scheme, and I was like, "Who is this Paul Yao? I don't know who
Oh,
he is. I don't know if I want to work with him."
yeah.
But I did some research, and the reason why I agreed to kind of partner with Paul and going after a license is because he had worked for a company in Massachusetts that was owned by a woman, a white woman who's amazing, and then also the number 2 was a black guy, and the
Mhm.
number 3 was Paul, and then there's another Asian woman, but they also additionally were donating a portion of their proceeds to a not-for-profit that works with formerly incarcerated populations.
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh, well, maybe Paul and I have similar values, and we
Mhm.
could link up and do this
Mhm.
in New York," and so the first thing we did before the application even came out, before we even looked for spaces, we started meeting with different not-for-profits to figure out the best match for us, to
Mhm.
try to find a not-for-profit that we could donate a portion of the proceeds of a dispensary to.
Mhm.
Um, and so the Doe Fund was actually like the 5th not-for-profit that we had met with through Roberts,
Mhm.
and we were very lucky because the state at that time decided to only allow for people to apply for a license who had individuals with cannabis convictions
Mhm.
or not-for-profits that served that population. So we pivoted and had the Doe Fund apply and be the applicant, and we went in as the minority owner.
What?
And we were very
Oh
lucky because there
my
was
God.
there were 19 slots that the state had wanted to create for not-for-profits,
Mhm.
somewhere around 19 or so, and only, I think 10 or 12 actually applied.
Mhm.
And they only awarded, I think, less than that.
A handful.
A handful, yeah, not that many.
Mhm.
So we were kind of a shoo-in, and we found out 2 weeks after we applied that we were awarded the license. The state said that we had the perfect application.
Look at you.
Of course,
I love
because we
it.
worked with a very experienced firm who had secured the most licenses for clients across the country.
Lawyered up.
Because of yes, because of these connections with the investor in California.
Mhm.
And so it just an incredible partnership. And we opened about a month after the license was officially announced in November.
Mhm.
A month and a half later, we opened 30, 40 days after that as a pop-up. We designed the
A
space.
pop-up. And where was the pop-up?
Yeah, so that was in Union Square, right next to our current location in Union Square. But
Mhm.
we moved very, very quickly. We came up with the name. the design of the space and built out the space in like less than 45 days.
And can you explain a little bit more about the design? Because again, from all of your life in terms of working with arts organizations, so how did that uh, connection to the arts then pour into the vision for the travel agency when
Yeah.
people walk in?
Yeah, so, when we opened in February of 23, we were the third licensed dispensary to
Yep.
open in New York City and
Mhm.
more or less the state even. But if you recall, there were 3,000 illicit brick and
Yes.
mortar shops in New York at that time.
Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah.
And the we'll talk about the dangers of it, but at the time, there is a difference between a New York State licensed
Yes.
dispensary and all these other stores that are rented out, right?
Yeah.
And they have whatever they have, products that they have, and there are issues when you go to places that are not
It's a
licensed.
very important distinction. Like, as someone who has consumed cannabis, I've
Mhm.
consumed since I was probably 15 years old, 15 or 16 years
This
old.
is a safe space to tell the truth.
I have obviously purchased cannabis through illicit means my
Yes.
entire life.
Howard University being one of those places.
Yes, yes, of course. Um, but we were purchasing through dealers or friends
Mhm,
or
mhm.
people
A
who
beeper,
Yes.
a cell phone,
Em
a pay
exactly. Many of these folks had very successful businesses and
did.
did very, very well.
Mhm.
But the difference is their product was typically from California, from the West Coast, from Arizona, sometimes even from maybe Michigan's probably later.
Mhm.
But it was really great product and it
Mhm.
was clean
Mhm.
and it was pure.
So talk
The
about yep.
product now
Mhm.
that is being sold in the stores is not the same product that we used to get from our friendly neighborhood dealer in New
Dealer.
York City.
Right.
It is reject products. It is product from California that
What
is
do you mean by
not
reject?
it's product from California, Arizona, from other markets that did not pass the lab tests,
Oh.
that were rejected
Oh.
because of high quantities of molds or yeast or salmonella or other things that are even more dangerous. But in addition, the people that run a lot of these illicit shops, like there's apparently, I think, one company that might own 30 or 60 back in the day when they were
Mm.
so prolific.
Mhm.
They spray them with chemicals.
I was about to say, yep.
They spray the flour with chemicals.
Perquat is one chemical. Mhm.
Yes, really, really bad for you. So it's
They're
not apples to apples. It's not the same product that you were getting back in the day from my guy was named Happy.
Mhm.
It's not the same product. It's not
Saved him?
safe.
You saved him in your phone as happy or like some star,
That
some
that was
random thing?
That's what he demanded that we call him Happy. But he had a team of many, many different delivery guys, right? They were all called Happy.
There you go.
But it's very different product, and so it's so important and essential. As I say to everyone, if you care about your community, but also if you care about your body, you will shop legal. Because I have so many friends, I think you included, who have gotten very, very sick, chronic bronchial infections. I have people I know who've had psychotic episodes and breakdowns, just getting violently ill and just having really terrible experiences. But also those businesses, as you know, back in Harlem on 125th, there was that illicit shop that
Yes.
had shootings all the time.
Yes, yes. By Madison, I used to live there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
really dangerous.
62 East, 125th Street. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, they're bringing criminal activity into the community. They're not paying their employees benefits. They're not paying taxes. So I went to an amazing event um, 2 days ago, maybe even yesterday now, where
Yeah,
the
because
state
we were texting.
announced
Mhm.
oh, yeah, the state announced the first wave of grants that they're awarding to not-for-profits that work in communities that have been disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs.
Mhm.
And the grant program is funded by the taxes from
From
the
the
legal cannabis companies, stores, all the companies actually in the state.
And I also
Um,
want to share quickly that sometimes these effects of the cannabis that are, like you said, that are reject, is could be long term as well. Perquat causes cancer,
mm,
so it's like you could feel good now and you can get high now, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there could be some issues as well. And so that's why we say
yes.
#go legal.
Yes, and there's
Mhm.
been fentanyl-laced cannabis
Ooh.
examples in New York City as well. Yeah, it's
Mhm,
very dangerous.
mhm. So you don't know what you're getting when you walk into these other stores.
So I would say that the way that you can tell if a store is legal is that they have this blue sticker that the
Mhm,
state has issued on
mhm,
their front door.
mhm,
There's also a website where you can go and actually search the name of the dispensary and make sure it is legal on the New York State Office of Cannabis Management website.
mhm.
So I definitely advise folks to do that.
I love this. And so you also, along with partnering with a nonprofit, you also believe that the pipeline of product can also be diverse. And so you're
Yeah.
working with a diverse array of products that are branded, that are owned by marginalized people. So can you speak to that as well? Like, what is the process? Like, so we have the design. It looks absolutely phenomenal. I still want you to talk a little bit more about the
Okay,
design.
yes.
It is literally like the Apple Store of cannabis. Go on and blush. It's true. You know you
Yeah,
put all this work into this. All the love is in there. It's beautiful. But can you also
thank
talk
you.
about how do you go about curating the product,
Yeah, so just
the
taking a step
cannabis?
back, the reason I got into cannabis and why I was so interested about getting into the industry was because of the mandate of the legislation that legalized cannabis for recreational use in New York State.
Mhm,
The piece of legislation called MRTA, the Marijuana Regulatory Trade Act. I can't remember what the
mhm,
MRTA stands for,
mhm,
because we use acronyms way too often in
mhm,
government and
mhm,
only acronyms. But
mhm.
the purpose of that piece of legislation was to really build generational wealth for people of color,
Say that again.
to build generational wealth for communities that have been disproportionately harmed by the racist war on drugs, which equals communities of color.
And I
Because,
will
yes, Black and Brown people have been obviously targeted for minor cannabis possession
mhm,
infractions at astronomical higher numbers
mhm,
than
mhm,
white folks. I was at this event the other day where someone said in Onondaga County in upstate New York, for every 99
mhm,
Black and brown
mhm,
people
mhm.
that had got arrested for cannabis possession, one white person got arrested.
There you go.
And New York City, I think, is the has been the worst actor probably during Giuliani
Mhm.
and even Bloomberg. So the purpose of legalization, the reason why it was passed in New York State was because of this promise of entrepreneurial opportunities for people that have been harmed by the war on drugs, for communities of color.
And I
Um,
will say that when
yeah.
we graduated from Howard is when the Rockefeller drug laws were being protested by
Yes.
rappers, and it became like a popular it became like popular culture. It wasn't even
Mhm,
policy. Everyone
mhm.
was like, "Yo, like we got to stop the Rockefeller drug laws." So you've gone from graduating from Howard as an anthropologist.
Yeah.
And again, I remember that because I remember they said that the bones were sent to Howard.
Mhm.
And I remember those bones and how the bones would have, and you could speak more to this, right? They would have etches in them that prove the level of abuse
Oh,
and
yes.
the level of just back literally back breaking work. You would see the ligaments torn from the
Yes.
bone. So you've gone from studying those bones to then studying the ripple effects of Rockefeller drug laws
Yes.
in New York City.
And David Patterson actually repealed that
There you
law
go.
when he was the governor of New York, and I was there at the press conference with, I think P. Diddy was there.
Yeah, I was well, you know,
Yes.
hashtag no Diddy. But yes, we'll keep the good and the bad. A broken clock
Yes.
is right twice a day. So so you've gone from thinking about again how the bodies of Black people were exploited
Yes.
during slavery. The bodies of Black people were exploited again, housed in prisons for
Mhm.
cannabis. And now
Mhm.
on the other side of that policy, where you can actually be an entrepreneur and build generational wealth,
Yeah.
right? And so now you have the store, and you can curate um, uh, various strands of cannabis in the store. So just talk more about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's not as many Black-owned brands in New York State and in the market as I would hope, which is, it's frustrating to me that,
Mm.
I think the state's made a lot of mistakes. They're well-intentioned. There are a number of dispensaries here in the state that are owned by Black and brown folks,
Hmm.
folks with cannabis convictions, which is amazing. I think many of them will not survive,
Why?
um, because the state kinda set them up for failure.
What do you mean?
The state told them that they would make $15 million a year in a small little mom and pop store in New York City. They have entered the state has created a loan fund for many of these to build out and to lease the space, which they can't pay back. They were told that all they have to do is open up their doors. You're going to become a millionaire overnight. Many of these folks didn't have extensive experience running
Hmm.
retail business,
Hmm.
let
Hmm.
alone a retail business in a highly regulated market.
Hmm.
So there's lots of different reasons why many of these smaller Black-owned licensed dispensaries will not survive. But there are so few Black-owned brands and Latino-owned brands in the market, which is very troubling to me
Hmm.
because the program really was supposed to serve really, and the term has been used, reparations,
Mhm.
reparations for communities of color. And at the end of the day, many of these folks who've entered into this industry in New York State will be in a worse off situation than they were before they got the license.
So will
They're
some of
going to
them
go bankrupt.
I was about to ask if they were gonna go bankrupt.
They've put a second mortgage on their home. They've spent their children's college funds. So we're at the travel agency, we're incredibly purposeful about doing all we can to support Black-owned brands, queer-owned brands, women-owned brands,
Mhm.
even some of the smaller farmers as well. And so I have some of my favorite BIPOC-owned brands here on display.
And I will say as you bring them up to display, we literally had the delivery come into the podcast studio. That was like the highlight of 2025 for me. That is a major win. There
Thank
you
you.
go. What other podcast is gonna have that? Okay. And we do have to talk about the pigeon. But go.
We do. And I'm so
Speaking of delivery.
sorry I couldn't get a pigeon delivered for us today. Maybe next time.
Take that, New
Uh,
York Post. We'll talk about it.
But Weekenders is an amazing brand. Started off in the West Coast, so it's doing really, really well because it was an experienced brand, and they had some really beautiful branding and packaging.
Mhm.
When we first opened, the branding was a little subpar initially.
Mhm.
There weren't a lot of folks that were really leaning into design. Obviously, at the travel agency, we want to make sure that we are displaying only the most beautiful packages and the most beautiful brands. So this is an amazing Black-owned brand from the West Coast. Has gorgeous, fresh pre-rolls.
Mhm. And I will say that you want beautiful packaging, but you also want potent cannabis inside of the packaging.
Well, potency is not always what we are pushing folks towards. We're trying to educate consumers to consume responsibly, but also purposefully.
There you go.
So the potency is not going to be the most important thing for most people. It's really
Quality.
the terpene mix. The quality, it's the terpene mix, the cannabinoids.
Mhm.
It's really what you specifically are consuming cannabis for.
Mhm.
Are you consuming cannabis because you have aches and pains, because you need to stimulate creativity, because you want to go to sleep? So you have to be very purposeful about what you're selecting, which is why we invest so much into education and educating our bud tenders. So we definitely don't want to encourage people to only smoke products with the most THC because
Mhm.
there's lots of different variety around that.
Mhm.
But yeah,
And I think too, in terms of like a New York State legal, right? Legal dispensary, right?
Yeah.
Like you're more mindful of that as well, right? You're much more a bud tender. You're much more about the consumer experience and not just selling them whatever you think they want to be sold, but also
Yeah.
teaching them about the plant. By the way, green for cannabis,
I love it.
and the necklace has flower. So continue to talk about what is this one?
So Foy is an amazing Black-owned brand. They're actually
Mm.
Black-owned brand. Their two founders are brothers, and they're from East Africa,
Mhm.
and they were former athletes. They were athletes in college, and they started off actually as a CBD brand, helping athletes with recovery. And so they are incredibly experienced as well, but they do these amazing sleep gummies and
Wow.
daytime gummies and just have an incredible product. It's very clean,
Mhm.
vegan, just very low sugar. And they also have other this has reishi and valerian root and chamomile.
So reishi is a expensive mushroom, and chamomile, which is very soothing and calming. So I like the fact that like cannabis can be the main ingredient and the main idea, but there's all these other ways that you can infuse the product with other types of elixirs, flavors that really create an experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is specifically really a wellness product, and a lot of our products are wellness products.
So can you distinguish between, I guess, big cannabis and wellness cannabis? Like what is
I mean,
the distinction?
I would consider all cannabis products to be wellness products.
Mhm.
Some lean into that a little bit more than others, but the majority of our customers, the people who come in to consume, are consuming not just because they want to get high.
Mhm.
They're consuming because they have, an ailment, or they have anxiety or ADHD, aches or pains, or they're recovering from chemotherapy or in the midst of chemotherapy,
Mhm.
or they've just gone through a surgery and they don't want to take all the opioids that their doctors recommended. They're trying to titrate off opioids.
Mhm.
So,
They could be a new mother,
yes,
although maybe a little older than a new mother, depending on.
I consumed as a new mother. I
There you go.
desperately needed it. Yes.
There you
But
go.
So there's lots of other reasons people come in. Most people do not come in just to get high. So I really would consider all these products wellness.
Yeah, and I will say, just as a disclaimer, right, that like these are products that you're recommending, but you're not a doctor and you're not
Correct.
necessarily saying correlating cannabis is going to cure anything. It's just on a menu of options to feel better.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It helps to just make your life better.
Yes.
The last product I just have to highlight here is an amazing Latina-owned brand, queer-owned brand, which is a new product that we just brought on. This is a chocolate, kettle chip flavored chocolate.
What?
It's also just incredibly tasty. When the edibles first came online here in New York State, they were not very
Edible.
tasty.
Yeah.
No. And the chocolates weren't all that flavorful. This is actually an incredibly creamy, delicious chocolate. And it also just happens to have THC.
The entire podcast crew is back here salivating and yearning. I love all of this. You are such a light in this world. The travel agency, there's 4 of them.
There are 4.
Let's let people know where they are.
So our first one is the partnership with the Doe Fund is on 13th and Broadway in Union Square. Our second one is in downtown Brooklyn across from the Apple Store and the Barclays Center by Atlantic Terminal.
Yep.
We have our third one that we opened is on 5th Avenue between 47th and 48th.
So right by Rockefeller Center, right there by Saks Fifth Avenue.
Right next to the H&M flagship.
Yes.
Across from Sephora.
Fabulous, darling.
That's a gorgeous space.
That is my go-to.
Yeah. And then we have our newest one in Soho, which has this gorgeous artistic vestibule that we just opened. And that's been open for about 4 months. But that's on Broadway, just south of Houston next to Target.
Yep. Been to that one too.
Oh, amazing.
So much
Love
fun.
the support. Thank you.
Hello. And so in closing, I know that we are going to be doing some fabulous, posh cannabis tastings at some fabulous places in New York City in the future. Stay tuned for that. 2 things. One, I want you to shout out this pigeon. Let people know, because New York Post can't be the story. We need to hear it from you. What's up with the pigeons?
Yeah. So the pigeon campaign was super fun.
Yes.
In cannabis, there's so many restrictions around marketing. Our Instagram page gets pulled down on a regular basis. We can't use the word cannabis. We can't show products. We can't display cannabis in our store windows. And we have to be very purposeful about where we advertise. 90% of the population has to be over the age of 21. So there's endless restrictions. We can't use colors that are too bright. We can't have more than 2 signs.
Because they don't want it to appeal to children. They don't want it to look like Fruit Loops, but the cannabis version.
Exactly. So we really have to lean into being incredibly creative on the marketing side. And we have an incredible creative director who helped us kind of develop the brand, the travel agency, and come up with the name, Jessica Schriffman. And she came up with this amazingly creative idea to really kind of lean into this fun, silly campaign and hire a comedian, the gentleman in the videos, the comedian, and Liddy, who's actually one of our earlier bud tenders at the travel agency, is an amazingly talented actor and Broadway star. And they star in the video series as well. And so it was just a lot of fun. And we just, it's cannabis. That should be lighthearted and fun. And we'll continue to do that because we're the travel agency and we're quirky and fun and edgy.
I love it. And so just to unpack it a little bit, there's a history of pigeons being deployed to deliver things, back in the day. And so to impregnate cannabis delivery with a tiny little pouch, that the pigeon could possibly actually deliver cannabis and train them to do so. Peak genius. How to get around cannabis advertising and marketing regulations and have fun while doing it.
Yes, exactly.
Take that, New York Post, and shout out to them for giving you free press.
Yes.
About it. So in closing, 2 things. One, what advice do you have for somebody that wants to launch an idea that can seem impossible, right? Because this is never work a day, right?
Yeah.
So you have figured it out. You're not working. You're having peak fun.
I'm definitely working, but also having fun. I'm definitely working.
So what advice would you have to the dreamers out there, to
Yeah.
the entrepreneurs out there, how to be as tenacious and savvy and witty and outwit the policy? What
Yeah.
advice would you have?
Definitely just jump right in. Like,
Mhm.
we did not flush out a business plan. We didn't even have a name. We didn't know where we were going to be located. And so I would say jump right in, but obviously it's incredibly important to have people in your circle and network who can help fund
Mhm.
a business and a new initiative, and also help to advise you on getting access to like the best lawyers, the best legal team, the best
Mhm.
consultants, the best
Mhm.
lobbyists.
Mhm.
So you really have to have a team of amazingly experienced people around you. So definitely like lean into your network, tap your network, take meetings with whomever you think could be helpful or who has access to those type of resources. But I would say just jump right in and don't wait until everything is perfect, 'cause
Right.
it never ever will be. And you're constantly have to be willing to be flexible
And pivot.
and pivot in order to
And
make it work no matter what.
and this is coming from the third New York State legal dispensary in New York City. So that's huge. And so do you have like a mantra, or like how do we get some of your mojo? Like what gets you going?
Oh gosh. Our team really gets me going. We have 250 employees.
Wow.
70% or so are people of color,
Mhm.
mostly young people
Mhm.
from lots of different backgrounds, a variety of different backgrounds, and they're so passionate about
They are.
cannabis. They're passionate about the travel agency.
Mhm.
They just, are just a uh, fresh air, like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I've
Um,
met some of them, and they're really fun, and they have a sense of humor, and then they'll also be insightful and informative. So
yeah.
it's a great
They
balance there.
inspire us every day.
Mhm.
So, much of what we do at the travel agency is really help to lift our folks up and really give them the skills they need in order to advance in the company.
Mhm.
And so being able to make a difference in people's lives who work at the travel agency is what really gets me going every
Beautiful.
day.
I love that. And is there anything that you want to recommend to people for them to learn more, to read more about cannabis, about you, about the world?
Well, definitely followed me on LinkedIn.
I was
That's
about
kind
to
of
say.
the most active place where I live right now in
Yes.
socials. And LinkedIn is just a friend to the cannabis community in general. That's kind of where everyone in the industry is located, because that's the safe space for us.
And Instagram, sometimes you said it's taken down.
Constantly, but definitely get out there. There's lots of really cool cannabis events throughout the city. Maze Cannabis is an amazing calendar, MAZE
Mm.
Cannabis, if you want to network with folks in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a really exciting time to be in cannabis in New York City, and there's
Yes.
still so many opportunities for growth. So many different areas where folks can create and build a business,
Mm-hmm.
and so many opportunities. So definitely jump in.
Cannabis is alive and well. And so the travel agency has 4 locations,
Yes.
and they're open from 9 in the morning to like 10 at night.
11 p.m.
11.
and
Yep.
midnight on Friday and Saturday.
There you go.
So check our website is thetravelagency.co.
.co, thetravelagency.co. So Arana Hankin Biggers, mother, entrepreneur, policy leader, visionary, lover of cannabis and lover of liberation,
Yes.
and fellow Howard University bison.
Hate you.
You know. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thanks for listening. I'm Nikki Frankel saying if you do what you love, you never work a day. If you want to see what we're doing, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram and TikTok and join the conversation on the Discord. Take care of yourself and those around you. Never Work a Day is produced by Preview Media. Producers are Gina Bouchard, Eleni Simos, and Stefan Vloshki. Our editor is Jasmine Jackson. See you soon.